Welcome back to this final segment of Cleaning Up the Mess. Let's go back to that whole question of enforcement. Dr. Starr, what do you think can be done about enforcing the existing laws in this country?
The problem, the problem with the law and custom are often often do not work together. And when that happens, law is relatively powerless. So what you've got is you may have a law that says, for instance, that you must have you may not hunt outside of the closed season. You may have these other laws, but they have to be backed up by custom. So what is needed is a lot of public education, and the people need to be persuaded that wildlife is for everybody. It's not just for those who can shoot or who have dogs. And so it's going to be a long campaign, but I liken it to the campaign in most countries in the world against smoking. Now you'll notice that smoking is much less prevalent here and everywhere else than it used to be, and that came about not primarily because of law, although the laws are there. It came about because of a change in custom, so a change in people's thinking.
Okay, Buddy, let me ask you this. Would you and your association and its members agree to the hunting season being shortened to a more reasonable time, or even perhaps not done for a few years, so that the wildlife are able to it's able to renew itself?
No, no, no.
Why not?
Because there is the saying, the well-known saying, those who do not learn from the mistakes of history are doomed and destined to repeat those mistakes. We tried just what you're suggesting in 87 to 89, when Minister Lincoln Myers unilaterally declared a moratorium. At the end of that moratorium on hunting, once the legitimate hunters were taken out of the forest, the poachers moved in, the marijuana cultivators moved in. By the end of the moratorium, there were areas, you have Kumak, you have Platanal, you have Biche, you have Charuma, you have Ecclesville, you have large areas of the Moruga Forest where no game warden ventures, no policeman ventures. They have been taken over by the marijuana plantations and the trap guns, and they will never be recovered in our generation.
So you're saying that hunting is the lesser of two evils?
You put the hunters there and these guys stay out of those areas. You take the hunters out of the forest unless you are going to put, Minister Myers said, you know, usual thing. Yes, we're going to send the regiment in there. We're going to send the defense force and clean up the forest. Not a single patrol was made by the regiment or by the defense force, and those areas are still taken over. Policemen now do not go into the forest in Biche. They do not go into Charuma. You read the newspapers. A son of a friend of mine a month ago, in his own garden behind his house in Rio Claro, got his leg shot to pieces with a trap gun.
Okay, now, Buddy, you're actually coming across a little bit as a tree hugger yourself.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So as a tree hugger, I want to ask you, you know, there are places in the world where each hunter is allowed to shoot only 1 or 2 male animals, not an unlimited number of females, as is presently the case in T&T. Would you be willing to enforce that rule within your association?
It won't work for a Goody.
No? You're saying no?
I have hunted those places. Right?
Yeah.
I have hunted, so I can tell you firsthand what obtains, why in many cases, and what the outcomes are. I have hunted Malaysia, I have hunted 3 islands in Hawaii, I've hunted every state in the US from California to Georgia.
You've killed a lot of animals.
Not necessarily. The hunting is not about the killing. Right?
Right.
It is not at all.
Right.
Let me also say that when I hunted it across the US, I did it from a motorhome with my entire family on board. There was not an awful lot of room for whole heaps of wild meat. Right? Okay. So we couldn't shoot an elk and a moose.
Ira, have you noticed that when I asked Bud whether the Hunting Association would come on board in favor of banning the sale of wild meat, he slipped away from that. Have you noticed? Have you noticed what his?
What is your response?
Misdirected.
What is your
My
response? We don't have much
very
time.
Quickly, there are a lot of school teacher ladies around Trinidad and Tobago who also have a right to the wild resource. They cannot take guns and dogs and go into the forest. There must be a mechanism where they can share in the wild resource. And the only way is during the season, legitimately, and using the legislation, Krista, you and I put together to license the farmers to licensed wild meat dealers, they can then have access to the wild meat.
Okay,
a
we
right
don't
to
have
wild
much.
meat. What a strange concept, Bud. A right to wild meat.
Okay, on that note, I want to just ask you, Dr. Starr, the last hunting law, the Conservation of Wildlife Act, was passed in 1958. Are they working on any new legislation at all?
Oh, well, you see, this is Buddy and I, you see, Buddy is laughing at that. I mean, we were on a committee to redraft it, and we put in a lot of effort. It was mostly Buddy and me beating up on each other, but you know, we put together something we thought was pretty good, and then it just kind of went away. It kind of reminded me of some of Buddy's answers. It just went off into space.
Well, you know,
The
hopefully,
politicians took it and it died.
hopefully it doesn't die this time, and you guys are going to do something about
there's nothing going.
updating the laws.
There's nothing going. We have attempted, the Hunters Association, and I represent also the hunters on the Wildlife Conservation Committee. And perennially I bring up, let us revise, let us get back to this revision of the laws. There is always talk, there's always a permanent secretary who says, okay, bring it to the table,